a party which turns into a nightmare. Hello or good evening, I'm Diane, fictitious name. I'll tell you all about one of my worst experiences that I have been able to live there is to it now 6 years old when I was 17 years old. I'm now 23. The text might be horribly long, and I apologize in advance, but it is well to immerse you in the context. To lay some groundwork, at this period of my life, I had just gotten back to the university. For me, it was an important step, so I had to capture the moment. Thus, it is that with a few friends of the high school, we had set ourselves the objective to organize a party related to this event. And where? In a very rural, very remote from any activity and potential neighbors. Why? Well, let's say that some parents were not so excited to leave us alone in an apartment. In addition, they regarded us as mature enough for us to find ourselves a suitable place to hold a party. The same evening, a friend fairly close to that I would call Manon, I had sent several proposals of houses for rent, each one more charming than the others, only it had a few limitations. The majority of rentals would not have been available at the end of December, probably because of the Christmas season. Knowing that the better for all of us would have been towards the beginning of the month of November. Fortunately or unfortunately, there were a few choices. And also, the minute they did, we had managed to dig three. The first was a terraced house, which really wasn't the best choice, but corresponded to each of our criteria, namely isolated, large, close, etc. The second, a house landes, but absolutely not at all isolated. And the third, a home in the roofs of reeds, which honestly could have been the case, but it was more than 6 hours away. So much to tell you that it was dead. As you might expect, we had opted for the first solution, namely the semi-detached house. And who says terraced house said neighbors. This is how Manon and me, we are starting to discover our potential dream place. Of course, we were all in agreement between us with respect to the choice of the home, where we would have been about 17. Yes, it's a lot. Arriving on the scene, everything matched our criteria, but also to those of a horror movie. In fact, the building was certainly beautiful, but also old, immersed in a thick fog surrounded by vines and centuries old trees. Less reassured, Manon and I had Tokay. No answer. I then pulled out my phone to check the time. If we were not arrived too early, you never know. But no, we were at the time. For 10 hours. In fact, it took 2 minutes where we were preparing us to go to come back later when a woman aged 50 years has opened for us. She was very nice, very casual. I remember even her outfit. Sneakers and jeans worn with a blue shirt with holes here and there. So we had taken the time with, I'll call him, and for reasons of clarity, Melanie. The rooms were in the majority, all on the floor with the exception of one, which was located on the ground floor, which is also mine. The condition of the property facts, Melanie has indicated to us a door as a kind of before sliding supposed to be in the party room. And indeed, behind it was indeed a large room with many tables. I think of all my existence, I'd never seen such a place as it was broad. At the end of the visit, I had, however, asked the famous question which I turned in the head, namely the tenants next door. What was it to them? At these words, Melanie had changed radically in tone until it becomes a deep, heavy with meaning. She had replied that no one stayed to the side and that under no circumstances it was not necessary to go there because it was their property to her and to her husband. At this moment, we did not find Manon and me. We are saying, without a doubt, that Melanie wanted to have a little privacy, and honestly, it's understandable. And it is as well that we had returned to our car before heading in the direction of the city, at us. Finally, we managed to find the perfect home. At least that's what we thought. I'll pass on the ellipse 4 days. The day had arrived. All our friends were expected around 19 hours. Manon and I were a party of 5 hours in advance, with 3 other of our friends, I'll call Laura, Chloe, and Marion, to prepare for the evening. Without further delay, we were all engaged in a task, while the world had its function. At the end, Garlands, lights, disco balls, speakers, sounds, ice cream and pastries were on the alert. There was even a swimming pool. At around 18:30 to 19 hours, the first to come had arrived. Marion was rushed to the amp to turn it on. To bottom. The atmosphere had become soon festive, and the whole world seemed to be delighted. The laughter and discussions mingled with the music, creating an atmosphere of togetherness and freedom. We were young, carefrees, and everything seemed perfect. No one seemed to notice the old building we were in or the mist that, at this time, began to invade more and more of the garden. So all was going well. A strange feeling had gradually installed in me. I was far away from me to imagine that this evening would mark the beginning of an experience that hantarate my thoughts for years. It was about 21 hours when something unusual happened. While everyone was dancing, a sort of thud, a groan, almost imperceptible, seemed to jump out of the walls. I had stopped for a moment, searching for the source of the noise, but nobody else seemed to have heard it. I had tried to overshadow this strange sensation, but the pressure was slowly installed in the air. Around 22 hours, a little over half of the guests were in attendance, and the laughter had intensified. But by the time I passed near the sliding door leading to the famous party room, I had seen a small detail that really struck me. The door neighbors, so tenants where nobody housed remember well, which up to that time had remained closed, seemed slightly ajar. I had wanted to take a look, but a thrill I had gone through the back, and I remembered the words of Melanie that we had clearly said, "Do not attempt." This simple warning was enough to hold me, to dissuade me to set foot in it. I didn't mention this to her or to anyone, not wanting to seem paranoid. But inside me, something was wrong. This was not normal for the door to be opened, and this will add a layer of unease to the atmosphere already strange. So I was back at the party, trying to forget a maximum pressure. It was then that Mark's fake name, a close friend of Chloe, came to me saying that there were more drinks, and he and his band of friends, they were going to leave to buy it at the pub around the corner. Because yes, we were really out in the sticks, and the pub was open until very late at night. It is as well that we were past 17 guest 7. As if that wasn't enough, our friends, Laura and Chloe, had to go to the feast because they did not have accused their parents of the event. Mary, unfortunately, remained with Manon and me. The rest of the guests were confined to a few of our comrades from the high school, which continued to wiggle on the track to eat or to bathe. It was then that suddenly my stomach was knotted. I had felt the irrepressible need to talk to the girls that I had seen. The door opened. This detail was not trivial. Soon, each of which was starting to panic, not knowing what to do to make himself useful. And it was true. What to do apart from open, stupidly, the door and look inside yourself? But, naive as we were, we had preferred to wait for the return of the boys, who would have been more likely to get there. We had probably taken about it a little too lightly. 30 minutes later, the boys were not income and do not stop attending school. This, which had led to a panic more than the total in my mind. Manon had proposed to call Melanie, but I had to decline. To one, because it was past midnight, and two, because it could be that this is anything other than that. Nothing. Tired, I decided to make myself in my room for me to rest for a few moments. The girls had promised to keep me informed if there would be new. Then I was climbing my bed, and this is where I had committed the worst mistake of my life. Yes, because convinced that the good country air is great for the skin, since my teens I got the idea to sleep. Down with the window slightly ajar when I went to the countryside. It was the case that night, except that the window had been open at my arrival with the girls to decorate the house. That is to say, in the middle of the afternoon, and since then, I had forgotten to close it. But tired as I was, I had not raised. I'd even forgotten to remove makeup, and I was still in my clothes. I had no doubt must have fallen asleep because when I woke up, I still remember it. It was so cold that I nearly fall off the bed. In addition, the air reeked of wine in a hurry, but abnormally. It was as if someone had coated the walls of grapes reduced in jam. Don't worry, this was not the case. Something else is wrong. I couldn't hear the bass amps, as if all the world had deserted places. Still in the fat, I slowly straightened up before I moved towards the door. A detail that I probably saved this night, it is that I didn't forgot to take my laptop with me. I decided not to prevent a person for the time being, as there could very likely have nothing. I had opened the door, still on my guard, before launching silly one. There's someone. Of course, there had been no response. Then I was headed to the party room behind the sliding door. I still remember I wanted to open it, but my instinct in me was screaming not to do it. I cannot explain it, but it is as if I was adopted. I was so headed to the stairs, I was mounted to the floor in order to see if the girls were still there, maybe to sleep in their room, or another member of the group. I am oriented toward that of Marion, which was empty. In fact, we would have had to say that she had slept in his bed, and suddenly she had left the premises without any reason, as Manon, who was in the same state. All the rooms were empty. In a daze, I reached my room. I had closed, and I was sitting on the edge of the bed while calling Manon. She had immediately dropped and had said, "Diane? It's going to question mark what?" When I had said that I was still in the house, I was super upset because of, one, nobody had taken the trouble to warn me, and two, because I was in the process of well baiter, alone in this house, ultra creepy. Marion, I had deduced, had snatched the phone out of the hands of Manon to me, screaming to go faster. They explained to me everything later, but the more urgent for the moment was that I go away. I can tell you that at that moment, a flood of emotions I had gone through: misunderstanding, fear, stress, and so on. So, yes, it is fine to leave, but I don't intended to certainly not give the feet a day. I had then, without thinking a single second, Barry's garment products and jewelry in my mini bag, which was full to bursting. At the time of leaving, I realized that I had forgotten to take back with me my laptop, which I had raised not far away from me when I was in my suitcase. I bumped a countless number of times as I was in a state of excitement. The smell of crushed grapes had never been so strong. It is at this time that, petrified, I perceived, not very distinctly at first, then harder by the sweet, there's an air of jazz mixed with the classic in both Rise of the Bulkhead. I quickly recovered my laptop, and without a sound, I walked out, closing, very slowly, the door. I opened the door, and before leaving, I threw one last look behind me, and I saw who, during the 6-year-old has traumatized my nights. Shape, blurry at first, through the bulkhead. A man, very, very big, who was watching me, listening to a jazz music creepy. I was petrified. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. It was then that the wall had opened, slowly, almost methodically. And there, I don't remember anything. Just me opening a sudden the door, swinging my bag in a bush at the front entrance of a run. I don't know how long I ran, but long enough, I think, because I was now in front of the pub. The same pub where the boys had gone. At this time, it was closed. I always had my phone with me, so once I found it, I had deduced. Far enough away from the danger, I had dialed the number of Marion, had indicated my position before hanging up. A few minutes later, for me, seemed to look a length distressing. Marion and Manon came in. I was then mounted in the car, and dropping my mask and passive, I cried, not able to stop me. The girls didn't stop to apologize, tears in his eyes not having been present. In fact, what happened that night is that shortly after I was lying down, the girls there are also Allie's, and then woke up much later. And seeing the time, 3 hours, and most importantly, the boys were not returned, they had decided to close the festivities, bring everyone home, before heading to the pub to look for. They explained that as they were crevés, because remember, we had prepared tirelessly all afternoon party in the evening. They had forgotten that I still slept. Once they had arrived at the pub, they had found the boys panting, looking at them with an air of breathless, completely stuffed. They had, therefore, taken the decision to bring them back to their home before you go in one of them. And this is where they have received my call and, so disoriented that they were, to me, have told to leave the premises because there was no one. But at no time did they do tay. No one was in the house. The next day, after a little rest, we were put in the way to the office, having taken time to prevent Chloe and Laura of the turn that had joined the party. Scandalisés and deeply shocked, they had insisted to accompany us to the police station. Unlike some cases, the officer we had taken very seriously, and we had promised to find my bag and send a patrol in the next quarter of an hour that followed. I had also given a quick description of the silhouette, yes, because I hadn't seen it completely. It was only a few days later that we had received the news. In fact, the officers had found a person. But what follows is even more ugly and upset me forever. There was, in one of the many cabinets of the party room, rows and rows of bottles of wine, all consumed in rows round glass feet. They had actually found a couple of pairs of strings and a mini cassette. Vinyl is still running. The man was returned by my open window, where the stench, and was hidden. We don't know where to, without a doubt the home of Melanie from the sounds that I had heard. In addition, a few days after this incident, the listing had been removed from the site, and even to this day, it is no longer available. As you might expect, this case has been closed with no action, as there was not enough of compromising evidence against this man. The officers had, however, assumed that he was one of the many wineries in the area, although this was not accurate. During 3 years, I had to follow a professional because my nights were troubled. And sometime I dreamed that this individual opened up the wall. I saw it face to face, and that he would. Finally, here it is. Today, I'm doing better. This story is not just written to make it pretty, it's also a warning. Follow your instincts. If you feel a threat to glide, do not listen to you. P.S. My bag had been found in the bush, well dented after the glide, and phew, nothing had been stolen. Bye.